Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast. Our primary objective is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never quit. The reality of life is simple. We all fall. We all fail. At times, we get knocked down. The question is, do we get back up? Are we stronger? Are we better prepared to attain the maximum of our potential? Thank you for joining our No Quit tribe. As you go for your greatness today, never quit. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. Welcome to episode number 364 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is movement before motivation. Our quote of the day comes to us from Steve Maraboli. Take action. An inch of movement will bring you closer to your goals than a mile of intention. If you are interested in helping us spread our No Quit Living message, we would love it if you would grab one of our new Team No Quit shirts or sweatshirts. You can grab one or two at positivitytribemerch.com. Once again, that is positivitytribemerch.com. I'm super excited to have our first three-time guest join us once again. When it comes to mental performance and mindset, I think Brian Cain stands alone. I always enjoy chatting with him, and I know you will receive a ton of value from today's episode. Brian, I'd like to welcome you back for the third time to the No Quit Living podcast.
Well, Chris, you couldn't get rid of me the first time, and you couldn't get rid of me the second time, so you brought me back a third, man. I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to be here.
So we're going to jump right into it because I know you don't have that much time, but on the last time you were on our podcast, you said something
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, you're a long time friend, and I have the system, the 10 pillars of mental performance mastery, and pillar number 2 is motivation and commitment. It's the 10 skills that people need to develop if they want to give themselves the best chance for success. And when we talk about motivation, people often get confused that they think that they have to feel motivated. And what I want them to understand is that motivation is not a feeling, it's a behavior. And I want them to also understand that mental performance mastery and being called a mental performance coach or applied sports psychology coach, it's not about how you think, it's about what you do. And there's a big misnomer that people get caught up in, which is, oh, it's how I think. No, it's what you do. And what you do is going to change how you think more than how you think is going to change what you do. Let me say that again. What you do is going to change how you think and feel more than how you feel and think is going to change what you do when you have mental toughness. So this concept, Chris, that motivation comes after movement begins is just think about the last time you went to the gym. Well, maybe, 10, call it the 10-80-10 rule, right? 10% of the time you don't want to go to the gym, you feel terrible, and you probably don't go. You give in. 10% of the time you feel like you want to go to the gym and you go, and it's great. 80% of the time, you got to act different than how you feel. 80% of the time, you got to recommit to your commitments. 80% of the time, you got to realize it's a start that stops most people. 80% of the time, you've got to realize that motivation comes after movement begins. And movements change moods, action change attitudes, motion creates emotion, and you've got to get started. So most of your energy is going to be spent getting started, getting your shoes on, getting out the door, getting to the gym. So you have to understand that and then build your success system around making that easy. Instead of having to rely on discipline and willpower, which are fleeting, we want to rely on our system. So classic example, this morning, last night's Halloween, take Carolyn, my 7-month-old daughter, to our first little Halloween deal. We got on a train, driving around in the park. It was pretty sweet. Came home. I'm like, Beryl, let's watch The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, And I can't believe how negative that is, man. I mean, I don't remember watching The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown and getting done going, I can't believe how negative that is. If you tagged every comment in that show, calling him a blockhead, telling him you're stupid, and I get it's a cartoon, but I'm not watching that again, man. I felt worse after watching it, and then, but this morning I wake up and I go in the bathroom, as I always do. And as I'm brushing my teeth, my shoes, my tights, my sweatshirt, my phone, my headphones are right there. So I brush my teeth, and literally I don't have to move a foot from my sink to get dressed. And then I go out the door and I start walking, listening to a podcast this morning with Sean Casey and Jim Rome. And then about 3 minutes in, I start running. Next thing you know, I'm 6 miles down. I come back and I'm ready to dominate the day. If I had to actually go pick out what I was going to wear this morning, or had to decide what I was going to do this morning, it would have been a lot harder for me to get out the door. So realize motivation comes after movement begins. So make it really easy to start the movement.
I could not agree more with that. And I love how you touched on that. And it's interesting, the concept of like attracts like, and iron sharpens iron. You've poured into me a ton over the past few years. But people ask me often, because I get to the gym every day at 4 a.m. and people automatically assume that I want to and I feel like it. And I always tell people, I said, it's not until about anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes into my workout where I actually feel good. But I do the exact same thing that you do, is I lay out my clothes, including my shoes, the night before. I have my drinks and everything all set, and I have my headphones right there. And it's a system. It's my routine. It's my habits. And it's what I do every single day. And I just love how you're super transparent with the reality that movement comes before motivation. So maybe a follow-up question I have for you is, for somebody that's listening right now, and maybe they understand what we just said and they conceptually get it, but they still have maybe that negative thought or that doubt. Is there one thing that you could recommend for them to do or try, maybe that might be in addition to what you just shared?
Yeah. Talk to yourself. Stop listening. And listening to yourself is like, when the alarm goes off at whatever time you're getting up at 3:30 to get to the gym at 4, you don't feel like getting out of bed. Bed is comfortable. And as human beings, we have to realize that we are wired for comfort, yet we have to rewire ourselves to seek uncomfortable situations and get comfortable being uncomfortable. Now, some people might look at that and go, well, it's Navy SEAL culture. No, that's everyday life. You're not going to feel like going to work every day. You're not going to feel like getting up to answer your screaming kid every day. You're not going to feel like going to the gym every day. You're not going to feel like writing every day if you're a writer, right? You're not going to feel like coaching every day if you're a coach. But once you get started, the feeling will come. And if it doesn't come, at least you got started and you're going. So stop waiting for the feeling to come and stop listening to yourself and that little voice inside of your head, which I would call the whiner, talking about, I don't want to get up. It's cold outside. I don't feel like it. And then become the winner and tell yourself, if it's cold outside, I got plenty of clothes. I don't feel like it, but I know the feeling will come after I get started. I don't want to, but I'm going to anyway, because I'm going to follow through on my commitments. So talking to yourself, not listening, is about predetermining your commitments. It's like pre-commitment. And I use the story of Odysseus, right? And Odysseus was the sailor, and he was coming in Greek mythology, was coming in around to this island where the sirens were. The sirens were these beautiful women who would sing this amazing song, and the sailors would want to get in closer to the island to see these beautiful women who were singing this amazing song. And their ship would get caught on rocks, and these sirens would turn into demons, go on the boat, kill everybody, take their gold, burn their boat down, and go back to looking good and singing well. And Odysseus knew this. So what he did is he made a pre-commitment. And his pre-commitment was he put wax and cotton in the ears of all of his men so they couldn't hear the song of the sirens. And he said, I want you to get close enough to the rocks, not where we're going to get stuck, because I want to see what's going on over there, but then we're going to get out of here. And he climbed all the way up to the top of a mast. And he didn't put cotton and wax in his ears, but he had his men tie him there. So as he's screaming, go closer, get closer to the sirens, they couldn't hear him. And his men took the ship in by the rocks, turned around and came out. And he was able to hear the song and survive because he pre-committed before he put himself in that adverse situation. So for example, if you want to make it easy to work out, lay your clothes out the night before and know what you're going to do. You want to make it easier, lay your clothes out the night before, know what you're going to do, and make a commitment to meet somebody at the gym, have an accountability partner, because it will be easier to quit on yourself than someone else. And if you want to make it hard for yourself, if you don't want to gamble, take the gambling apps off your phone. If you don't want to drink alcohol, get rid of all the alcohol in your house. If you don't want to eat the candy or the Doritos, get rid of those. Because if you want to be successful with your behavior, you have to make it easy to do the things you want to do and hard to do the things you don't want to do. And this is backed up by research in the books Atomic Habits by James Clear, Mini Habits or Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg, and all the other habit books. Call it The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, right? I'm kind of a habit nerd. It's one of the pillars, pillar number 7, routines and habits of excellence. So when you study habits, success leaves clues. Listen to what everybody is saying, and they're saying the same thing. A habit starts with a trigger. So the trigger for both of us is if my clothes are laid out by my toothbrush when I wake up, I don't have to think or work hard to put them on and get out the door. But if I have to go back through the room and walk past my bed and my wife's in it and the 2 French bulldogs are in it and it's dark and it's way too comfortable, I'm probably going to jump back in. But once I'm up, if I can get dressed and know that that's the domino to get me out the door, I dramatically increase my success rate.
So needless to say, I think every listener, whenever they're listening to this, will be going to the gym at least that morning or the next morning. So appreciate you sharing that. Since you mentioned 3 books, I have to ask you, and I think you knew it was coming, but is there something that you're currently reading or something you've read recently that you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
I'm kind of a golf junkie, so I'm reading the 4 fundamentals, the four foundations of golf. Right now. But the thing I go through is I go through the Optimize book. Or I'm sorry, the Optimize app. My friend Brian Johnson, who created Optimize Heroic, it's 20-minute book summaries. And you can get the Optimize app for free. If you go to optimize.me/Cain, you can get the app for free. And you can go through some of the best books in 20-minute Cliff Notes. And whether you want to read the 20-minute 6-page PDF summary, or you want to listen to the 20-minute audio, both 2 of my books, The 10 Pillars of Mental Performance Mastery, 1% Better, are both in that Optimize app, again, which is free. And that's really what I go through, Chris. And I have a book list of a book I go through every week. And it's in the coaching calls I do that week, whether it's one-on-one or group coaching with the clients I work with. And if anyone's interested, just head over to briancain.com and click on coaching, and you can send me an email and fill out basically an application to get into my coaching program, either one-on-one or group. And we go through a book of the week. So this week, we're going through the book Overachievement by Dr. John Elliott, who is a professor of sports psychology at Texas A&M. So we go through that book. And next week, we're going through the book How Champions Think by Dr. Bob Rotella. And what we're looking for with that book is one strategy that you can use. Because it doesn't matter what books you read. It matters what you do with the books you read. And for your listeners right now, lock into this. It doesn't matter how many of Chris's podcasts you listen to. It doesn't matter if you listen to Mental Performance Daily every day. It's about what you do with what you listen to. Are you putting it into action? Because ACE, baby, action changes everything. If you want to close the gap from where you are to where you want to be, doesn't happen by how you think, doesn't happen by what I read in my podcast I listen to. It matters by what you do. So we got to start taking massive action. And I shouldn't even say massive action, right? I'm trying to break a habit here. We need to take tiny action, right? Massive action is, I think I got to do something big. You don't. You just got to take the next step. And that small action might be make the bed this morning when you wake up. The small action might be lay your clothes out the night before. The small action might be I'm never going to go a day again in my life where I don't do a set of 10 push-ups. Because usually if you do 10, that's the start to stop most people. You'll work into doing other stuff that day, right? So anybody can do 10 push-ups. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do them right now while you're asking me this next question here on the podcast, Chris. And you should probably ought to get down and do the same, because I think so many times we make the mistake to think that 8, 9, 10, 11, just to do one more. We make the mistake to think that I have to make these really big jumps and I have to take these massive steps, and you don't. Right? Becoming an author starts with writing the first page. Becoming a runner starts with getting out the door and jogging to the mailbox. Becoming, somebody who works out every day happens to be doing a set of 10 push-ups, which we just did, dominate the day. So don't think you have to take some massive action. You have to take small action with massive commitment to just do it every day.
I got to ask you, have you ever done 11 push-ups on a podcast before?
Probably.
See, I never have, and this is just audio, but I did my 11 as well, so I think that is awesome. Want to push back on something you said, because it really does stand out to me. So a lot of people talk about, and I've had some really good conversations with some of my individual clients and teams, the difference of going through that check mark concept of I read that book, I listened to that podcast, I went to that seminar workshop, versus taking intentional action, saying, okay, I listened to this podcast and these are the 2 things, or I read this book and these are the 5 takeaways. What is the one step, or what is one thing that maybe you could recommend to our listeners in regards to not just consuming, but then being intentional with the implementation?
It starts with your mindset going into the consumption, right? Consume to do, not for entertainment. I call it the E to E to E ratio. The limited time that we have in this world, right? And you're hearing this from someone who in the past year has lost his brother or lost his father. So time in this world is very fitting for what we're talking about right now. And the E to E to E ratio, education, entertainment, or energizing. And when you have free time, ask yourself, do you watch a game because you're a fan? Do you read a book because you want to take some action? Do you read a book because you want to be entertained? Or do you get out and energize yourself? And energizing can happen by watching a game if you're looking for something that you want to take away from that and apply, or you're doing it with a family member or people who you love and you're using the game as a way to help build connection. Energizing can come from reading a book. You're learning how to do something that you want to do. It's a self-help book. You're learning something that you want to do, learning a new language. You're learning something about what you want to do, creating or breaking new habits. You're learning about something you want to do, financial education, whatever it is. And it can also, so with the limited time that you have, is it going into education, entertainment, or energizing? And I think so many people make the unconscious decision and mistake to put too much time into entertainment and not enough time into energizing and education. So what I would encourage the listeners to do is, again, whether it's this podcast, whether it's my podcast, Mental Performance Daily, that you can find wherever you're listening to this, go ahead and search for that. If it's the Optimize Book app of my friend Brian Johnson, is be looking for ideas and looking for concepts to either do one of 2 things. 1, validate something already in your personal success philosophy, or 2, give you new ideas to act on. So for example, this morning on a run, I was listening to a podcast and it said, oh God, let me pull it up real quick. I made a note. And the other thing is don't rely on your memory, rely on your system, right? You talked about system earlier, and I have an acronym for system called Save Yourself, Stress, Time, Energy, and Motivation, or energy and money. And the one concept I took away from the podcast I listened to today was, if you complain, you remain. But if you praise, you raise. Meaning, if you complain about something, you just remain the same and you maybe move backwards. But if you praise the situation and what you can take from it with your perspective, then you raise yourself up to another level. And I think when you complain about other people or complain about situations, you just stay the same or go backwards. And we're always trying to raise our game. Thank you, Alan Stein, and trying to raise ourselves to another level by, praising what it is that we do have, praising what it is that we can do, praising the fact that they make an amazing technology where somehow, some way over the airwaves, you and I can see each other, we can hear each other, somehow, some way there's light that we flip a switch and it turns on in our room. Somehow, some way I can see you, I can hear you. Somehow, some way we have both afforded a home that we live in. Somehow, some way, we don't complain about the fact that my car's not this, my car's not that, or I'm stuck in traffic, but I just praise the fact that I have the ability to have a vehicle, that someone created a vehicle, that I can afford a vehicle, and then I have a vehicle to be in to help me take me where I want to go. And I'm not going to complain about the fact that the traffic is slow today.
System, SYSTEM, save yourself stress, time. Did you say energy and money?
Effort or energy, yeah, and motivation or money, probably depending on, the audience that you're talking to or the situation you're in. You can kind of play those letters. But yeah, save yourself stress, time, effort, and motivation, or save yourself in our world, save yourself stress, time, energy, and money. Because if you're saving yourself time, you're making more money. If you're saving yourself energy, because you have more energy, you can invest into what you want to do, you're going to make more money.
Have you coined that yet?
No. Go ahead and take it, trademark it. And then send me the slip that you're trademarking it. And every time I use it, I'll send you $1.
So you mentioned something that I have to just touch on it for a second.
Yeah.
If you listeners are going to listen to another or an additional podcast besides a No Quit Living podcast, I 100%, and Brian has not paid me yet to say this, he will send me a check. It's in the mail. But your podcast, Brian's podcast, Mental Performance Daily. If you are looking for something that is quick and easy, and in no way, shape, or form do I mean to demean what you do in quick and easy, but I'm talking from a time perspective, they are anywhere from 2 to 4 minutes. And I will tell you, I have two things I listen to every single day because of you, Success Hotlines, as well as the Mental Performance Daily podcast. So before I ask my last question to you, if you could just please tell our listeners again the best way and place they can find you. And definitely I also recommend that they listen to your podcast.
Yeah, I mean, briancain.com, right? If you go there, BRIANCAIN, briancain.com, you can find my podcast there, as well as my free coaches course, my free athletes course. I have a free course for baseball players as well as golfers. There you can find my coaches certification, which I know you've gone through, which I appreciate you being a part of our team there. And you have I have an athletes course there that people can go through. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram at Brian Cain Peak. And if you want to be with me every day and do a lot, not a lot, a little, and create consistency around building your mindset in the 10 pillars of mental performance mastery, which is the system I've used with 8 UFC World Champions, 4 Cy Young Award winners, a Heisman Trophy winner, over 10 NCAA National Champions. If you get into the Mental Performance Daily podcast, you get me for, like you said, 2 to 4 minutes a day, Monday through Friday. I try to share a story on Saturday, and Sunday I do a meditation that recaps the entire week. And you can find that podcast wherever we're listening to the podcast here today.
Awesome. And then last question I have for you is the same last question I've asked you twice before, but if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners today.
We got to close the gap. And the gap is the knowing doing gap, right? Too many times I hear my clients or people say, yeah, I know that. Again, it doesn't matter what you know, it matters what you do. So when you're listening to us talk about laying your clothes out the night before, making your bed, knowing that you're going to have to expand more energy to get started than you are to actually get to the finish, do you go, yeah, I know that? Or do you say, yeah, I do that? That's the difference between success and failure, between fulfillment and falling short, is not being the person who says, I know that, but being the person who says, I know and I do that. So the biggest gap in the world is the gap between I know and I do, and we've got to close that gap. And like any gap in our life, we close it with strategy, we close it with coaching, we close it with accountability, clarity, and support. And that's how I know you provide for your clients, Chris. It's what I provide for mine, is the clarity of what to do, the accountability of when we're going to do it, and the support of being in your corner, because everyone's going to get off track. And when we do, we need a coach to be like our GPS and get us back to where we need to be so we can close that gap.
I love it. Everybody, go back and listen to this again. Go back and listen to Brian's podcast. And I thank you for being here. The question is, when will you be back for the 4th time?
Whenever you'll have me. Dominate the day.
Thank you for listening to episode number 364. As always, Brian Cain, 100% delivered and then some. I hope you took notes, but most importantly, I hope you go ahead and take action. In his parting words, Brian shared something that is so powerful. The biggest gap is the one between knowing and doing. With that in mind, my challenge to you today is to take a look in the mirror and ask yourself, what is it that you know but you aren't doing? Challenge yourself to take action today. Take what you know and begin doing, and stop waiting. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.